Welcome to the Next Generation Rockstars podcast. If you are trying to figure out how do you recruit and retain this next generation of rockstar talent, well, you are in the right place. Hey, good morning, and welcome to the Next Generation Rockstars podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Hanna, and we have a phenomenal leader for you today. Her name is Dee Ann Turner, and Dee Ann used to be with the one and only Chick-Fil-A. Dee Ann, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's really my pleasure to be here, Amanda.
Wonderful. Well, we have a lot to talk about because Dee Ann, why don't you go in and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. Well, boy, it's quite a story. I did spend 33 years at Chick-fil-A, and the majority of that time, my responsibility was to lead talent and human resources, and then later social responsibility. And I retired last year. I had written my first book, It's My Pleasure, in 2015, and had the opportunity to just start speaking and writing, consulting, and coaching. And so I speak about 50 times a year globally, and Baker Publishing picked up It's My Pleasure and asked me to add content to it, and we redid the work, and it will come out on September the 3rd as Bet on Talent, How to Create a Remarkable Culture and Win the Hearts of Customers.
Perfect. Well, for those from my audience that are not familiar with Chick-fil-A, as a consumer, I will say this. Chick-fil-A is known not only for fast food, wonderful chicken, but they're known for their service. That is why, for people like myself, that's why you go to Chick-fil-A. It's because the service is going to be good. The food's going to be good, but it's the service that sets it apart. And I would imagine that you might have had a hand in that, being over HR and talent for so long.
Well, I'd like to take credit for that, but there are actually, so many people. And number one is actually the Chick-fil-A franchisees themselves. Yeah. You see, Chick-fil-A is now, I guess about 2,500 franchisees and $10.5 billion in sales. When I first went to Chick-fil-A, I believe that we were at about 175 million in sales with 150 restaurants. But those franchisees are totally responsible for selecting their own talent and training them and developing them. And so I think the secret sauce, if you will, of Chick-fil-A is in the selection of that franchisee. And that was one of the things I really did. In fact, it was my favorite job at Chick-fil-A was selecting those franchisees. Now there are about 50,000 people who inquire each year for 120 opportunities to be a Chick-fil-A franchisee. So actually, people say it's easier to get into Harvard than it is to become a Chick-fil-A franchisee.
Wow, I had no idea. I mean, I knew it was difficult. I actually know a few franchisees, and the process that they put you through is incredible. But I would like for you to say that stat again. What was that again?
It's about 50,000 inquiries each year of people who would like to become a Chick-fil-A franchisee for only about 120 opportunities. And let me take it a little further. Okay. 2/3 of the people who are selected actually come from somewhere within the organization. Most of them had been a Chick-fil-A team member at some point. So now we're talking only about 35 or 40 that are even available to those outside applicants.
That is insane. Those are some crazy numbers. So you actually just said a few minutes ago that the secret sauce to Chick-fil-A was really the selection of those franchisees. So that's something that we haven't really talked about on this show because usually it's specific to in-house corporate hires, but this is a little different. So what makes it so different? What makes it so difficult? But what makes it so special?
Well, and of course, this was my role a few years back. So I want to be sensitive to the fact that, things may be even a little different right now. But as it was when I had that role, we look for three things in our candidates. And this really came from Truett Cathy, the founder. The first one is character. And he always said character first. And when we talk about character, we're talking about an individual whose values and purpose and mission align with the organization. It doesn't mean it matches perfectly. It just means that they understand what those characteristics are, and they're comfortable with that. So aligning with the Chick-fil-A purpose, mission, and values would be one part of it, the franchisee selection. And the second part is competency. And the interesting thing, that changed so much over the time. I told you that when I started doing that work, we had 175 million in sales, and those were all mall restaurants.
Yeah.
You see, in 1986, Chick-fil-A started opening freestanding locations. Well, over time, the volumes of those restaurants have become very complex. And by the way, about 500 of those franchisees operate 2 restaurants, and a dozen or so operate 3. So we're talking about, very large small businesses that these some of these franchisees are running. So competency of what was required in 1985 to run a mall restaurant versus what's required in 2019 to run a freestanding restaurant with the kind of average sales that Chick-fil-A produces, and then to look at people and say, you know what, in a few years, we want them to have the capacity, the competency to actually operate more than one restaurant. So when we select for competency at Chick-fil-A, not just selecting for what's available right then, but thinking, is this the leader that has the capacity to do more later on? And then lastly, looking at chemistry. How well does the chemistry match the team, the franchisee market team that they're a part of, the people that they'll work with at the support center staff. So what we look for, and what we look for at Chick-fil-A is, number one, character that match the organization, competency to match the role, and chemistry that matches the team. And that's true of franchisee selection at Chick-fil-A. It's also true of the support staff there at the corporate headquarters.
Oh, absolutely. I am very good friends with several people that actually work at corporate headquarters, and also the process to be hired there has, it really is a long process, but it's also a very rigorous process. And you guys have done an incredible job of weeding through who's going to be successful. Because everybody I know that comes in to work for Chick-fil-A corporate, they're there for life. They're very proud of that fact. And that's not something that you see a lot in other companies and other corporations and other industries. What do you think it is? What is it in that recruiting and hiring process that really makes you say, okay, this person is going to be a rock star here?
Well, to start with, one of the things that I like to say is, I don't hire people, I select talent. And there's a difference. Yeah. When you hire people, I think of quantity. I think about in the restaurant environment, are there enough employees to cover the shift? Are there, do I have enough people in the dining room? Do I have enough people in the back of the house to prepare food? But when I think about selecting talent, it's like, do I have the people with the character, competency, and chemistry to fit the organization in the role in the team? And so that first difference is a huge difference, the difference between hiring people and selecting talent. And I think the other part, and over time, especially with the millennial generation, they want faster decisions and faster opportunities. So Chick-fil-A's made adjustment over time in their selection culture around that. When I came on board, it wasn't uncommon to take 6 months to be selected. And now that time has had to shorten. But one of the things that Chick-fil-A doesn't cut corners on is making sure that it's a match both ways. Making sure that the candidate is not just the best candidate for the job, but that the candidate sees Chick-fil-A as the best organization for them. So the selection process includes opportunities not just to evaluate the candidate, but most clearly for the candidate to also evaluate Chick-fil-A. And while, you made the comment, you said they're there for life. And, I was there for 33 years. There's 40-year veterans. It's a common thing. But the reality is that business is changing and generational differences. And so now we, as I was part of Chick-fil-A, we would say we like long-term decisions. So we hope that people will be with us longer than what you would expect somebody to be with an organization. But we recognize that things were changing, and that not necessarily was that a lifetime anymore, but it very well could be. And part of the reason is, after the selection of that talent, then it's the way Chick-fil-A stewards their talent and the opportunities that they have. And every person at the support center has a development plan. Everybody has a budget for their own personal development. and they work with their supervisor and their self-identified needs, and they can use those development dollars in all kinds of ways to improve, not just as an employee and a leader, but also personally in areas that would help them personally develop to be more effective in their role. And Chick-fil-A franchisees have the same opportunity as part of their agreement, is they're able to use funds for their own development too. So it's an organization that truly believes in lifelong learning, provides those opportunities to steward their talent well. And that has a lot to do with why people stay so long.
Oh, I would agree. As my friends have always said, that is one of the things that they have enjoyed the most, is that they have been encouraged to continue to learn. There's a lot of companies out there that say, oh yeah, we provide these opportunities, but actually it is really something that is important. It's in the day-to-day culture, and it's very much encouraged for everyone to do that. And that is something that is so important, especially for millennials, especially for Gen Z employees. They're looking for that investment in them, and they're looking to be able to continuously learn and grow and push themselves in different ways. So I love this. You guys are way ahead of the curve. This is wonderful.
Like I said, it's growing constantly, and Chick-fil-A continues to add a lot of talent in this area of their business. And I'm sure that will help secure that for the future as well. And part of my work in the last year since retiring from Chick-fil-A is traveling around to a lot of other organizations too, and seeing some of their remarkable cultures. And I continue to find that organizations that are willing to invest, a lot in their selection process, and then also in the stewardship of those employees, are able to keep them around a lot longer. One of the things that was kind of funny, I'll have to tell you, when I first came to Chick-fil-A and I started this work, I didn't have a budget for a real key item in human resources. I didn't have a budget for separation, which is amazing. And the reason I didn't is because at Truett Cathy really didn't intend on making any changes. I had a very nice budget for selection, and I had a pretty healthy budget for stewardship, but it had no budget for separation, because he didn't really believe, he believed if we did those other two things well, we really wouldn't have that need. Now, of course, as Chick-fil-A grew from like I said, $175 million when I came there to $10.5 billion when I left, we obviously needed that. But to that very day, the selection and stewardship budget always outweighed what was invested in separation.
So let's talk a little bit about your book, Bet on Talent, and that is coming out when, DeeAnn?
September 3rd.
September the 3rd. So for those of you watching or listening, it is already available to be pre-ordered pretty much everywhere, correct?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And you can go to my website and get it too.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll put a link to that below this interview. But so why was Bet on Talent so important for you to write? Because writing a book is not easy. It is sometimes a very painful process, but why was it so important for you to write Bet on Talent?
The funny thing is that I wanted to be a writer since I was 8 years old.
Oh.
And I was a journalism major, my first trip to college. And when I got out of school, what I realized were two things. One is I didn't have the life experience that anybody was going to want to read about anything I would write. And secondly, I couldn't make a living at it. So I took off in a little bit of a different direction, but that love never left me. And finally, in 2014, when two things had happened. The year before, my dad had passed away. And in 2014, Truett Cathy passed away. And they had really been two significant business mentors in my life. And all of a sudden, I started writing down all of these lessons, all of these things that I had learned, and principles around growing a remarkable culture and around selecting extraordinary talent. So I started as blog posts, and the next thing I knew, I had 16,000 words. I was on my way to a book. And so it became important to me to publish the book for two reasons. One is I didn't want the things that I had learned. I didn't want the people that were on that journey with me as in those early days of Chick-fil-A who learned directly from Truett. I didn't want us to ever forget what he taught us. And secondly, all the thousands of people that would come after him, I wanted there to be some record of what we learned, because, Truett said people decisions are the most important decisions a leader makes. And so Bet on Talent is really the encapsulation of how you make those great people decisions. And I just felt like it was something very, very important that lots of people would benefit from. And that's why I've written it.
That's amazing. Well, I love that, because I think that a lot of times companies can be a little short-sighted when it comes to recruiting. Now, I'm a former recruiter, so I understand that what I'm about to say is probably not very popular. But a lot of times it's more about filling a role, and they're only looking at that immediate need. And I like that you guys, or Chick-fil-A, specifically focused on the person as in a very holistic way. And not only just the person and what they're capable of then, but where they can go eventually. As long as everything, values and character aligns, that can take you really far. But it's got to be something that you've got to have the vision for. Now, let me ask you this. What have you guys found, or have you seen, whether it's at Chick-fil-A or some of the other companies that you've been working with since your retirement from Chick-fil-A? Have you noticed any financial benefit to really focusing on talent and getting the right talent the first time?
Well, there's no question about I've talked with other organizations about this too, but there's no question that when you focus on selecting the right talent from the beginning, I mean, just the cost savings of what it takes to reselect and retrain and so forth with people. So even though it's painful, especially in this full employment economy we're all in, I mean, that's everywhere I go, that's what we're talking about, is this full employment economy. And I'm lucky to get a warm body, much less you're talking about this extensive selection process. But in the recruiting process, what I encourage in employers and companies, always be recruiting. Talent is around you all the time. Don't wait till you have a role to be recruiting. Recruiting is about relationships and developing those relationships so that when you have that opportunity, it's right there. You've got that person there. You've built that relationship, and they're ready because they have a personal relationship with you. They're willing to make that change, even in a full economy, full employment economy that we're in now. I think about an executive I worked with for years. He was fine. My role was heavy recruiting, Amanda. I loved this executive because a lot of other executives, it was like, that was my job. Go find the people. That's your job. Mm-hmm. But he was different. He saw that it was a partnership, and that was very much a part of his job to always be recruiting. And that guy never had a problem finding talent. In fact, to this day, some of the really outstanding young leaders I see at Chick-fil-A, this executive selected them, and here they are growing and so forth. But it started in relationships, some of them when they were still in high school. And I saw the same thing. I was with a client recently and speaking at their conference, and I was watching some of their success stories. And, they had one of their leaders was very involved in the community, and she spent a lot of time developing those relationships. And while all of her counterparts were talking about how they couldn't find any talent, she has people waiting in line, waiting for an opening in her organization.
That's an amazing thing to see. But it's also very amazing to me that people want to complain, but they don't want to put in the work to build those relationships, which are so valuable.
Well, we get that. I mean, when you have a job, you think about all the other roles that leaders have. I mean, and they have this main thing they're being held accountable for in the organization, which is why it's so important that as organizations select leaders, they select people who can be talent magnets, who can attract people who are great. They're not great managers, they're great leaders that people will want to follow because they do have other responsibilities, but this is key for their success. And those who do it well know that. They know the better talent they select, the easier their job will be. And actually, when they have great talent, they can spend more time on finding more great talent.
That's true. So let me ask you this. You kind of talked about this just a second ago, but let's say we have a young team, millennials, Gen Zs, and how do you recognize when you're looking at this team who has the capability of being a great leader? Is there something that you're looking for when you look out at this group?
Well, for me, I'm looking for a track record and a strong track record of leadership, even in the youngest of candidates.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you a story about this young man. I'm super proud of him. I started recruiting him when he was in the 10th grade to be a Chick-fil-A support center staff member. Now, he was years away from being eligible just due to
Yes.
his age, but he was well-rounded. I saw him on the football field. He was a leader. He was a great student. He had ambition and dreams. And so he happened to be a friend of one of my sons, and I just developed a relationship with him and followed him. His first year out of Georgia Tech, when it was a time when jobs were a little bit more scarce, but most organizations don't want freshman interns, and they're selecting, junior. Well, some of them are hiring, but we would be selecting juniors and seniors, that could come on board with us afterwards. But I was able to convince the group that he would work with that he was just a really exceptional talent. And so he came on board and he worked that summer and did a fabulous job. Went back to Georgia Tech, and the next 2 summers he spent at UPS and Halliburton, and we competed to get him that final summer, and he came. And he's still there today. He's been there for a number of years now. I want to say maybe, I can't say 6 or 7, but leading in his function, doing a great job, bright future. And, that's not uncommon about how to look at talent. It's like, so, he had that leadership track record, that strong character. Even for the few responsibilities he had, even as a teenager, he showed a lot of competency there. And his relationship strength, the chemistry with other people was really obvious. So if you know what you're looking for in your talent, that you're looking for that character, competency, and chemistry, and what the traits are in that, then it's a whole lot easier to identify it. So the first thing, you asked me the question, what are you looking for? Well, the first thing I'm looking for is a leadership track record, because I know that these people decisions, that eventually, even if it's not a leadership role right then, I'm going to need leaders. And a great source of getting leaders would be from the bench that I've already created. So I'm trying to bring those in. The second thing I'm looking for people who are here to serve. Now, I've spent my career in hospitality and service industry, so obviously that would be part of what I would be looking for, is people who are wanting to serve others. When I selected a corporate staff member, their whole job was to serve Chick-fil-A franchisees. A franchisee's job is pretty obvious. They're serving customers and even their own employees. So looking for people who have a real heart for service was always important to me. I look for people who showed good judgment and good decision making. We all make mistakes. I've made my full share, of course. But when you see a pattern of that, it's probably not the best talent you could select. So I'm looking for somebody who's made a strong track record of good decisions. Those are some very general things above and beyond what's required for the job. But when I'm looking for the diamond in the rough, somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience, those are the types of things I'm looking for.
That's amazing. I love that. And I love that you have this completely laid out. You're very specific. That is, I think, a skill that a lot of hiring managers at whatever level you may be at need to really develop is this being able to say, oh, okay, it's more than just what's on a resume. It's got to be more than that. I am not a believer in the warm body recruiting process, is what I call it. I'm more in they've got to fit your culture. And it sounds like you've got that down pat. I love it.
Warm bodies is just hiring people. But when you find a match, that's selecting talent.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, wonderful. Well, Dee Ann, I have enjoyed this time with you so much. We could actually go on for another 2 or 3 hours, but I try to be very mindful of my audience members' time and effort. Where can you tell everybody where they can find your book? Remind them again when it's going to come out, and let's do that.
All right, Bet on Talent, How to Create a Remarkable Culture That Wins the Hearts of Customers will be released on September 3rd. It's now available for pre-order just about anywhere anyone would order books online, and it'll be in bookstores on September the 3rd. also visit me at my website, which is at DeeAnnTurner.com, DeeAnn Turner.com. You can order the book directly from retailers off of that one. Also, I invite all of your listeners to please follow me, especially on at LinkedIn at Dee Ann Turner, on Twitter at Dee Ann Turner, Instagram at Dee Ann Turner, and then finally my Facebook author page, Dee Ann Turner. I would love to interact with them there.
Perfect. Well, wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. I hope that you took a tremendous amount of notes and learned a lot from DeeAnn, and we will see you in the very next episode. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of The Next Generation Rockstars, where we have discussed all about recruiting and retaining that next generation of talent. So I'm guessing that you probably learned a tremendous amount from this week's Rockstar Leader. And if that is the case, don't keep me a secret. Share this episode with the world, but really share it with your friends, with your colleagues, because they also need to learn how to recruit and retain this next generation of talent, because these skills are crucial to business success moving forward. Now, of course, I want you to keep up to date every single week as we are dropping each and every episode. So be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform of your choice, and you will see the Next Generation Rockstars show up just for you.